welcome to the Let's Play Hockey podcast. We are joined by Tom Holler of the Red Line Report, LPH columnist. I am Brian Zolman, editor of Let's Play Hockey. Big news this week in college hockey. We might be a little late to the game talking about it, but it took a few days to kind of absorb everything, kind of hear what everybody else is saying. I don't like to jump in right away and be like, "Hey, this is who we should hire. This is why he should be fired or why he was fired." Um,
Right.
so there's been a lot of back and forth on the firing, if you want to call it that, of Bob Motzko. Had a good run in the maroon and gold. Got us to the national title game a couple years ago, and I think there's some criticism there on how that game was handled, and I think if that game is won, like it should have been won,
Correct.
Bob still got a job. Uh,
Yeah.
but it is what it is. Division One hockey, especially when you're at the U of M, it's a pretty cutthroat position. Hockey in general, Division One NCAA hockey has become pretty cutthroat in general in terms of the new rules and the CHL and the NIL and the transfer portal and a lot less loyalty in the game nowadays than maybe there was, Tom, back when you and I grew up. But I wanted to get your initial thoughts on, we had talked about Motzko and maybe it was time for the Gophers to move on and find some new blood behind the bench. Obviously, they were kind of thinking what we were thinking, and I think a lot of people were thinking that. What are your thoughts? Are you surprised?
I'm a little bit surprised on the timing and maybe 30-70, right? 30% surprised, 70% not shocked. I would have thought, and I think, from what I've heard the last 2 days, is it would have been one more year. And when I looked up his contract, I walked away with he was through the 26-27 season next year. But then there's media outlets reporting it was still 2 years remaining. What was that actual buyout? I'm not sure how that worked out. Hasn't really been published, but surprised. I would have thought one more year at it, but not shocked. I mean, you and I have been behind the scenes talking about this podcast and Motzko and the Gophers' future. We were kind of teasing that since Thanksgiving turkey trot. So blink, blink, here we are in mid to late March, and it's reality.
Do you think that the season they had 11 wins, sixth in the Big Ten, that's just not a Gopher hockey season at all. Obviously, you give coaches a little bit of grace, to have a down year here or there, but I mean, this was
Right,
a
for
down,
sure.
down year. Now,
Yeah,
people that are on Motzko's side of this say, well, he had some guys leave for the NHL that he wasn't anticipating leaving and they left. But I think in today's game, you don't know who's staying and who's going. Not with the portal now, so you better be ready to backfill your roster at a drop of a hat,
right.
don't you think?
Definitely. And I mean, it's listed as a mutual parting of the ways, right? So that it sounds nice to the general public. It's a good PR spin. And maybe that's the truth. Maybe it was mutual. Maybe Bob approached the AD, right? Maybe he approached Coyle and said, Let's sit down and have a chat. Let's grab some lunch. Let's see where our temperatures are at." Maybe Coyle tapped him. I don't know the inner workings of that, but it wouldn't surprise me if the stories come out down the road in the near future that Motzko was 50-50 on returning and was easily swayed into, yeah, you know what? Home life, the hard situations he's had personally, and the losses that he's endured, that's been unimaginable what he's gone through. And he's, with all due respect, as we all grow older very quickly, he's approaching 65, right? And maybe he's just kind of like, I'm really not on board with the NIL and the CHL kids coming down and all that entails. And I don't know that I've got the energy for another 2 years of that or what have you. And maybe it is mutual. I mean, look at Nick Saban at Alabama.
Mhm.
He's just done with this. It's just not the world he wants to be a part of anymore. That's a big factor. I get it.
I agree with you on that. And Coyle hasn't really made a statement, other than saying thanks, Bob. Uh, and I guess he's at some type of basketball tournament with kind of a lack of communication there on Coyle's part, I think. Um,
That's I agree. It's like what basketball tournament? Like and I'm not in the know. I don't follow college hoops like I used to. Is he at a site? I think he's in St. Louis, right? And I don't know if that's a men's site or a woman's site. Are either of the Gopher basketball teams in either tournament for the men or women?
I filled out a bracket and I didn't see the Gophers in there, so
Okay, I didn't think so.
I don't know about women's.
I don't know either. I'm not sure.
I don't think that tournament has started, has it? Does it go soon? I don't know. I'm a hockey guy. Sorry,
Yeah,
basketball
too
fans. I don't
much
think we got a lot of
talking to
basketball
say.
fans listening to us. So
Right. I'm a mindless hockey opiner. I'm not following hoops like I used to, except for the Houston Cougars a little bit. They're fun to watch. But um, yeah, it's a little disappointing with Coyle. Up. See ya. You guys are gone. Toodaloo. I'm in St. Louis.
yeah,
What?
yeah.
Can
Well,
you give us a little something?
and I don't think anyone is saying that Bob is a bad coach. You don't get to St. Cloud State and the U of M, being a poor coach or a poor leader. I think you are correct in stating that perhaps the old school coaches are getting a little bit rankled with the new system that's in place. And we talked a little bit too about how, I mean, it's a lot on a coach. I mean, let's just think about being the head coach for the Gophers right now. First of all, you got to manage 20 to 23-year-old kids, right? And they're still
Mhm.
kids. Um, I mean, they're young adults, but they're college kids. Not only do you have to manage those personalities, you got to be able to get that locker room the way you want it. You got to focus on what's going to happen on that bench. Then you got your day-to-day on ice activities that, let's face it, that in and of itself is a full-time, high salaried job. If you can do those things. Now you throw in NIL, you throw in portal, you throw in the fact that every single one of these kids, if they don't have an agent, they have an advisor. Okay.
Correct.
So now you got to deal with agents, you got to deal with advisors. In some cases, I'm guessing you got to deal with parents. There's also the alumni angle on this where you have to deal with alumni. You have to please them. You got to go out and get booster support and NIL support. I got a feeling, for a guy who grew up, in the 70s and 80s and coached mainly in the early 2000s up through now, the game has changed so much that yeah, maybe it's just too much for him, and it might be too much for most coaches. And we talked about maybe it's time to take the UND route, North Dakota, what they did, hire a general manager that can take care of all that extra stuff that is now on the plate
Right.
of a head coach, and just and deal with those agents, deal with those advisors, deal with the portal, deal with those things. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, exactly right. I mean, you painting the landscape there, and I'm tired just from listening because it's so much going on. I can't imagine being the coach and having that pressure on you. And, these are kids, young adults, but, you know, think back to when we were that age and now with all the hyper speed of life today and social media and agents and money, no money. What line am I on? What's my future? Should I stay? Should I go? Should I be a big fish in a smaller pond than the U of M? I mean, it's you got to be a head coach. You've got to be the ultimate project manager. You've got to be a psychotherapist. I mean, it's a lot going on. And I think with the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, it's become pro, right? It's, everybody's like, well, then you go to the AHL in hockey before you go pro, typically, and that's the pro level. Wrong. Big time Division One college hockey, football, you name the sport, really, basketball, it's pro sports. The amateur college athlete is dead. It's gone.
Correct.
And that's hard for, anybody over 35 even. That's hard to grasp, but that's the facts. And it's a changing world and some of it, change is a part of life, but I think most of us don't like much of this at all. I mean, the portal and the NIL, I mean, make a commitment, and the NIL, I think that goes back to the O'Bannon brothers out of UCLA that really started that. And I get it. You're making huge dollars and we're making nothing. But wait a minute, you're at college for academics, at least a little bit, aren't you? And you're getting a free education. Remember when that was the trade-off that had value?
right?
You can argue the value of education all day, but uh, come on now. But now it's the world we're in, so you got to adapt to it and you got to go 110%. And to me that screams somebody's going to need a little help with recruiting and strategizing, travel time, and dealing with the agents. And that's a GM, right? North Dakota has a GM. Lo and behold, North Dakota's what? Second ranked in the country, third ranked. They're top five, correct?
Right. Well, yeah. I
St.
mean,
Thomas, St. Thomas has a GM, Northeastern, UMass, Miami of Ohio, North Dakota. I mean, it's slowly creeping into that fabric, and it's just a new age. It's a new dawn in college athletics at the big time D1 hockey level. I think that's got to be part of the decision. Whoever you're interviewing, whatever you're breaking it down, hearing a candidate say, I'm going to need a GM. Yes, I'm going to need my two, three assistants, what have you. They specialize in different parts of the game. One's a great recruiter. He's backed up by my second or third assistant and myself, but we need a GM to help the whole thing. If a new candidate doesn't bring that up, they're off the list right away, in my opinion.
I think your best candidate, you got to figure out what's the job description. Are you looking for a master recruiter? Or are you looking for a great hockey coach? It's hard to be both, right? Um, it's hard to be a salesman and also be an X and O guy.
Hey, tell that to
And
Kevin O'Connell at the Vikes, huh?
yeah, yeah. So, I think traditionally the U has been able to recruit just through its tradition, obviously. I mean, if you're one of the best players in Minnesota, you want to play for the Gophers. Well, we found out that getting the best players in Minnesota isn't enough to maybe get you to that national championship. And, Lucia, I think, was the first one to kind of go outside of that when he went out and got Vanek and a few other guys. And of course, he had the back-to-back titles, right?
Vanek was a major part of those ill teams.
Huge, yeah. And now with the CHL being involved, and I get it. You wanna, I mean, part of the pride of Minnesota Gopher hockey is the fact that it is mostly homegrown. Now, does that mean we stick with a homegrown coach? When we talk about candidates here, I mean, there's plenty of them out there. There's plenty of names that have surfaced. Or do you go out and bring someone in from the outside that maybe is not from Minnesota, wasn't a Gopher, but is a damn good hockey coach?
That's that's the main principle, and that's the guiding factor to me. Number one, undebatable, unequivocal, the best possible coach that you can find. That's your move, regardless of Minnesota, regardless of Gopher alumni status, any of that connectivity, that nepotism, coaching trees, ex players, whatever. With all due respect to the program and those players, they're some of the best the country's ever seen. That said, we live in a different world today with all those factors that we've mentioned, and it's going to keep changing and it's just going to get faster and faster. And of course, you want to recruit the top Minnesota players. Of course, you want to call them and go after them and sell them on the program. Um, but I think you've got to expand out of the border of Minnesota. We have in the past. We usually, I think Bob in the last 10, 8 years, 9 years, he's had two or three kids. He's had a Canadian. He's had kid from Sweden or Finland, right? Um, and that's great. But I don't think in this day and age, as you look at the recent history, these last 4 or 5 years, the last five NCAA champions minimum 1/3 of that roster is international players. And that's going back 5 years now. So you don't want to have to hit quotas per se, but one or two international kids, one or two Canadians, I don't think that gets it done. I think you're looking at building a base of four, five, six kids where even at the U of M with its tradition and Minnesota folklore, you've got to be hitting a quarter of your team. 25% of your team is international flavored, bigger, stronger, older, tougher on the edges. And kids, the other thing for me is kids that are coming in that, 3/4 of your roster can't be 18-year-old freshmen every year. You've got to start getting older and stronger and that man strength that 20-year-old freshmen bring. Kids
Yeah,
that have spent 2, 3 years in juniors that are still hungry, that haven't had a representative and agent since they were second year Bantams,
well,
right?
yeah,
Kids that are just, I'm here with my lunch pail. Let's go. I mean, I love
that's
a
the
Sammy Walker. I like the potential of a Javon Moore. That's great. But we can't have, with all due respect, because I'm a late conference Edina guy, but we can't have five Edina guys. We can't have the best of Wyzetta, Minnetonka, Edina. It's really cool and neat to talk about it. It that those days are gone. They're over.
yeah.
We've got to move forward.
I agree. I think that's kind of been my take for the last several years now is getting the best 18-year-olds doesn't always translate into team success when they're coming in, and nothing against them. I mean, but they're coming in and they're playing for an NHL contract. They're a
Right.
first, second, or third round pick or whatnot. They're playing for an NHL contract. Team success and a national title becomes secondary. You know, I think it's just hard to build a team culture when you have so many individuals pining to sign that NHL deal, right? Um, Plus, they're young. Generally, they're young. Generally, if they are really good, a first or second rounder, chances are they're gone early, right? So they're not playing at age 23, 24. So give me the kid that he knows that college hockey is his last hurrah, that after this, it's Wednesday, Sunday night beer league, and he's got to go get a real job. So he's like, this is my last shot, guys. You know, this is it. And if you get enough of those guys driving the bus, I mean, obviously they're talented still, but
Sure.
they might not be that high end draft pick or someone who's going to play professional hockey into their early 30s. So this is it for them. And I think most of your successful programs, look at Western Mich, um, even look at the UMD teams that won back to back pre-COVID, filled with 22, 23-year-old college hockey players, not
Grind.
not prospects, players.
Right.
Big difference,
Right.
especially when it comes to this time of year and everything's on the line, and you're going into the corner and you're coming out with that puck regardless, because you're not worried about whether the Blackhawks, is on your voicemail when you get off the ice, or whether the Predators are gonna call you. This is it for you. And
Right.
and those hungry players, like Herb Brooks said, I mean, in the movie or back in 80, you don't need the best ones, you need the right ones.
Right.
And I think whatever coach comes in, hopefully they adopt that type of mentality. Obviously, you need skill, but you need heart. And I think maybe that's something that is lacking, at the U and maybe some other programs where you get all these high end kids and top draft picks.
Yeah. You get into a success arena and you experience it for a year or two, you have a good push, and you kind of start to fall into a pattern. We all do it in daily life. We all do it in our careers. We all do it in our hobbies. But, for every Casey Middlestat, for every Sammy Walker, give me the lunch pail grinder. Give me the kid from Red Deer whose dad owns a ranch and he works at 5, 6 in the morning on the farm, right?
Right.
Give me the guy whose dad is from Swift Current and he's a logger. Give me that guy. Okay. And now mix in your Minnesota soft skill players. But then I want some rugged toughness and a kid who comes in at 20, he's a freshman, turns 21 before the end of his freshman year, and he's here for 4 years.
Mhm.
You've got to have that balance of there's going to be superstars that are going to go after 1 year, 2 years. Logan Cooley's going to leave. Okay. We lucky we had Snuggerud for 3 years, right?
Yeah, very
Uh,
lucky.
right. And that was great and fun, but we still failed. And so, what are we doing here? What are we missing? I think we're missing the depth in the lines. When's the last time you went, God, that third line at the U? Wow, those guys get after it. When's the last time you said that, right?
Right.
And that means older, heavier, stronger, grittier players. Because, like you say, come national playoffs, NCAAs, just like the pros, that rink gets smaller, the space gets tighter, and everything clamps on you quicker, and it's a different game. And you've got to be able to sustain that and fight through it and have a modern attack. I think the Gophers sometimes play on their heels a little bit and are a little bit too conservative. Whereas a Quinnipiac, God damn it, this is how we're playing.
Yeah.
Fast, on our toes, heavy hitters. That Quinnipiac team, that's already 3 years ago, by the way. Can you believe that? That Quinnipiac team that beat us in overtime, half of that team was Canadian. And I think the average age on that team was just at about 23 years of
I think they
age.
were one of the
They were
older
like
teams in college hockey.
22.8.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you look at Denver, the last few years, a third of that team, sometimes close to half of that team, international players. Of course, they got a great coach in Carl. So is Quinnipiac with Rand Pecknold, but that's the bar. That's the kind of program you want to be. Penn State's going to come and go with their big money, and paying recruits to come in like a Gavin McKenna, and that's cool. That's the game today, right? Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Right.
Um, but to me, the Carls, Denver Pioneers, Rand Pecknold, Quinnipiac, that's where you want to be. You're not going to be, like you said, you're not going to be undefeated and in the Frozen Four every year, but there's zero excuse, none, for the Gophers not to be in a down year, 10th or 12th in the country and highly competitive. And you're damn proud of your squad and they're proud of the fans. I mean, that's built in, but that should be the worst expectation here. Bare minimum.
You mentioned some names there, Pecknold and Carl at Denver. Let's talk a little bit about some names that have come up in conversation about potentially being the new bench boss for the Gophers. Obviously Garrett Reboin from Augustana, he's a Gopher guy. And all these guys are mentioning are have ties to Minnesota, right? And we talked about maybe it's time to get away from that. Maybe it's time to bring someone in from the outside. But a couple names I'm gonna throw out at you. Let me know what you think and if they got a shot or if you think that they are front runners. Let's start with Reboin from Augustana. What are your thoughts there?
Um, Smart, youthful, aggressive, knows how to navigate and build from scratch. Look what he's done at Augustana, right?
Hmm.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but 5 years ago, they're not a D1 hockey program. Is that right?
That's correct.
Even 4 years ago.
Yeah,
And they're what, 15th, 16th in the country right now?
they're still in their infancy, but they're
Yes.
learning to
But
run
look what
before
he's
they
done.
walk, it seems. Yeah.
Right. Look at that turnaround. And he knows Minnesota. It would make for happy feel goodery, which we Minnesotans love, one of us, right?
Hmm.
Tends to make me puke, to be quite honest. But it satisfies that world. He's a top five, top three candidate to me, and he's an absolute immediate phone call. He's well respected, and the players and recruits love Raboy.
Ben Barr, Maine. He played at Shattuck, played college hockey at RPI, been the head coach at Maine for 5 years now. He's only 44. So he
Yeah.
might fit the mold of maybe being young enough to be able to navigate all these new things, maybe not so much young enough, maybe not old school enough. Um,
Right.
what are your thoughts on him? I don't know. I don't know a lot about him.
Well, I'm not as familiar with him as Verboen and some of the others, but I think Barr's a Cloquet Duluth guy, is he not? I think so.
Grew up in Faribault, it says.
Terrible. That's right. That's Shattuck connection. Okay, so back down south. So, um, well respected in the community. I know the scouts that I talked to the last couple years, they've mentioned his name as one of the top three options for the future for the Gophers to
Mhm.
replace Matsko, and that's before what's happened this week with Bob. Tough discipline is key. He's built up the main program. They're always a threat. They're always a tough team to beat. They play very, very good defense, two-way players, and he's got a lot of experience with the portal and recruiting out of Canada.
I gotta think.
He's a definite
Yeah,
interest.
yeah. Obviously, well, we should be able to recruit out of Canada. We're a neighboring state too. I just think there hasn't been a willingness to really, do a deep dive into Canadian players. That
Yeah,
probably needs to change. Nate Lehman, Providence, he won a if they go outside of the state, he doesn't have any Minnesota ties, but they're thinking his name popped up. He's at Providence now. He won a national title um in 2015, 2016.
it's 10 years now. So, you
52
know,
years old. I know nothing about him,
women's coach won 10 years ago and we let him go. So maybe that's a little too long ago. I
right?
don't know.
Reed Cashman, Dartmouth, another one.
Now,
He's a Red Wing native. I don't know if you know him at all or know
I
anything about
do.
him.
I have a personal friend that's a relative of his and speaks very highly of him. A modern coach with an old school mindset. He's about discipline, defense, and being tough. A two-way tough player is
Mhm.
his type of player. He has pro experience with the Washington Capitals. He's got the Quinnipiac experience. Reed Cashman, to me, I think he's a top five candidate. I would call him and put him in my top five without a doubt. Dartmouth, I believe, is in the top. Aren't they ranked seventh or eighth currently? They're a top 10 team. And I think he's been there 3 or 4 years and he's got them in the top 10. Z, Dartmouth is in the top 10. Think about that. That's Reed Cashby, my friend.
Well,
Uh,
I do think, we don't talk about it maybe enough. The parity in college hockey is great. I mean,
sure,
it
sure.
when you got schools like Quinnipiac and Union winning national titles, the parity is good. Um,
Yes. And which further cements the fact that the game has grown, the game has evolved. Your recruiting cycle has to be every 2 years, if not every year, right?
well,
And it's
now,
sad to
yeah,
say that it's the game. It's like at minimum it's a 2 year cycle, and at worst it's every year. And I think the folks like Furschweiler, Raboyne, Reed Cashman that have built these programs that were either non-existent or just kind of stagnant and moribund for quite a few years, and now they're elevated them. Those are the people you want to talk to. And I think age is a factor, but I think, somebody, you don't want to go to a 35-year-old coach, right? That's a little too young, with all due respect. But I think that
I think
45, 50-year-old coach, perfect. They got the energy still. They're excited. They're going to get it done. But you got to have somebody that knows the portal, comings and goings, and they're about international recruiting, not just Canada, but Europe too. I mean, these Czechs, uh, does anybody work harder at the youth level and World Juniors than these Czechoslovakians? My God, man, bring them over. And they're producing goalies left and right. Another factor for the Gopher job to me in an interview is what's your plan for our goalie situation? We can recruit the soft skill kids. We'll get aggressive in the portal. We'll get some international thumpers in the third, fourth line and on that third pair D, right? To grind away. build up your PK. But son, we need some goaltending. And we've got to be established as a school that breeds goaltenders. And I don't care where that kid's from, but we've got to build up that aspect of the program.
Yeah, I think we haven't been great in that area, or the Gophers haven't been great in that area. Furstweiler is what the next name I was going to bring up. I don't think that's an option. He just signed a huge deal. He's got a huge buyout. They're sticking a ton of money
Well,
into that rink there, or into their facilities.
they're building a new rink. He's got a hell of a program. He's a Western Mich alum. He is a Rochester native. He'd be, as you know, my number one pick for the head coaching position. He did sign that contract, which goes another 4 years. So through the 29-30 season. However, the buyout, and I've confirmed this, is 1.9 million. Not cheap, but if you can give PJ Fleck extensions year after year for winning mid-tier bowl games, if you want to stay a prominent D1 hockey program, let's go. You know, you and I grew
Well,
up.
I'm not saying the Gophers don't wouldn't want him. I'm saying he
He'd
wouldn't
be
leave.
interested. Right,
Yeah,
true. I think if you could negotiate that buyout, I think he would listen, and I think if he's going to interview for the Flyers job last year, he'd listen to the Gophers job.
true. Yeah, I mean,
But
I'm
we'll see
guessing
what
that
happens.
phone call has been made. You know, um,
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
sure.
maybe it was a quick call, or maybe maybe he'll be on a flight here after the season. Who knows?
He's at
Uh,
Manny's tonight. Who knows?
yeah. Uh, couple other outside names, maybe long shots. Potomi. Um, I've heard rumors that maybe he was, you know, maybe even on campus and looking to, I don't know who he's talking to or what, but I don't see that happening. What are your thoughts there?
Um, that doesn't give me a lot of excitement. If you many things um, that aren't overly positive about players' experience at Northern Michigan. And for as long as he was there, no tournament berths, not one. He accomplished some things in that league and he was on the rise for a while and then it just fell apart. And I think we'd be hiring what we've already experienced, right? I don't know Patolny from Adam, just his playing career. And from what I've heard tangentially about the coaching job at Northern Michigan, and it's just very lukewarm reaction from me. It's just not glowing, with all due respect. I think it's more because, and this is just me, but for me, it's just like, well, we've been down this path with Lucia and Matsko, and it worked at first, but it was because you inherited some other players. And then once it was your program and your recruits, things just declined year upon year and then fizzled out. And so I think if you hired a Patolny, that would make some of the rabid Gopher fans feel good. And it's back to that nepotism, that provincial mindset, got to be one of us. And I just think that time has passed. And I think he's got aspirations, Patolny, of getting into the NHL, maybe with the Islanders program. Would he come back? Of course he would for that job. I just think in 4 or 5 years, you'd be looking for another new coach. That's my biggest thing with Patolny. That
Yeah.
new blood is what we need, not recycled gopher blood. No more rodents on the roster to me.
Ah, well, how about Huskies? Matt Cullen. How about a
Well,
former Husky? His name's been thrown around. I think the benefit there that people are saying is that he's just a guy in the know. Obviously, there's a pipeline that he would have from Moorhead to the U, which I think there's already a bit of a pipeline there, but his
Yeah.
connections to NHL and maybe to some of these NHL guys who got pretty good kids as players coming up. But again, there you're getting into a little bit of a trying to get the names and not the best players or not the right players. So
Right.
obviously, he knows hockey. He's worked in player development with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Um, Excellent guy, but he has zero college coaching
And that's the drawback,
experience.
right? I mean, Matt Cullen's Matt Cullen. I mean, who didn't like Cullen coming out of college and Penguins and finishing up with the Wild? He helped Moorhead's program elevate a bit last year. And I think, from what I've heard, he's really put some drills and some things to think about into that program and infused them with some the Cullen name, his offspring to keep coming into the U. That's neat. But again, now you're slipping back into the nepotism provincial mode. And I just want to avoid that. Matt Cullen, though, as an advisor, as maybe a GM job, head of, he's like your GM, helps with recruiting, helps manage these kids coming in and out. Wow. Because I don't know that Matt Cullen wants to be a head coach. Like, I think he's about youth and developing the youth and growing the game. He just seems like so grounded in that, and the kids just worship him. And he's such a good guy. Um, Ton of respect. I mean, that's interesting. It's definitely worth a discussion. I'd bring him in, but I feel like if he was part of the team, that would be perfect, you know? And does the Moorhead up north guy want to live in Minneapolis? I don't know.
Well, that's another area we haven't talked about is, you know, has it been tougher to recruit kids to the U of M, to Minneapolis? Obviously, it's the Gopher hockey program, but there's a lot of options out there for these top players, for a lot of these
More
kids.
than ever. You're right.
And maybe, the fact that Minneapolis hasn't been in the news for a lot of good things in the past, a couple years.
Correct.
Um,
And yeah,
so, does that play a role? I don't know. I don't know if a kid from Red Deer or from, Moose Jaw or whatever, here's Minneapolis and is like, ooh, boy, I can go to Madison or Minneapolis. What city do I want
right,
to be in?
right.
Do you think that plays a
I
little bit of
think
a role in decision making for
I
some of
think
these?
it's I think it's a big role. I think it's a factor, big time.
Mm,
I don't think it's a small factor, especially the last, handful of years, right? It's just that socio-political climate, if you will. I think that's the term I'll use to be somewhat PC and hold myself back. But there is a problem with stumbling block, but there's a problem with perception right now of Minneapolis, of the U, safety in Dinkytown. I think Teddy Townsend had some skirmishes off campus, and we hear about these reports of um, burglaries in Dinkytown and laptops and iPads getting stolen. There's a perception problem and a crime problem at the U. It's a fact, and there's a lot of um, players at the high school level and even down into Bantams where I've heard feedback from parents, if the U comes calling, we're not taking it. And I hate to report that. It makes me sad to say that. It bums me out, but it's a fact. And that's got to get cleaned up. Your number one job, regardless of if you're on the left or right, is the protection of the citizen and students, no matter what. Start there. Then you got to rebuild the program and get to the Frozen Four, and all of this is a moot point. Winning cures every question, answers every question, cures every ailment. End of story.
It is the magic ointment, that's for sure. Um, well, we will see what transpires. They haven't really given a timeline. Like we said, Coyle is out of town doing his thing, so I don't know if there's a sense of urgency on his part. Obviously, he's got to hire a women's head coach too, um,
Right?
so we'll
It's
see what
another whole
transpires
world.
there, and we'll talk about Coach Frost in another podcast. Um, and I think it's, we want to wish Bob Motzko well in whatever endeavor he chooses here in the next chapter of his life, because
Good guy,
obviously a
good human.
wonderful, yeah, wonderful guy, and a great hockey coach. He's got a tough job, and the next guy who comes in is going to have an equally tough as hell job to do. A lot of pressure. I think Bob has always handled himself well. I think his players, like playing for him. I think he's, like you said, he's just a good person, and you can never go wrong in hiring a good guy. But
You know,
it's a results driven
right.
job, and if the results aren't there, you're always kind of on the hot seat. So, and we don't know if Bob was let go or if it was a mutual decision, like you had mentioned. So I'm sure
Right.
that'll come out when Coyle wants to do a press conference or make more of an official, lengthy statement on all of it. But any other thoughts
Yes,
on this Gopher job
I
and
do have one thing I want to
okay,
bring up. I think once a coach is named, I'm assuming it'll be that first week of April, right after Easter. I think it'll be 2 weeks and maybe into a third week. A little due diligence, look at 10 to 5 to 3, and then make your pick. I hope that they talk to some people outside of Minnesota on that decision. Um, I've got a few people in mind, but we can talk about that at another time. And I think we should talk about the players coming and going, who's a flight risk, no matter the coach coming in, who's returning. But I think we should do that after they name the next coach. But one thing I want to bring up is this tidbit, and I haven't heard anyone bring this up in the last few days since Motzko's been released. You talk about flight risks. You talk about two players, Brody Zemer and LJ Mooney, correct? LJ Mooney is now doing some Excel Energy commercials. So he's
all
got a
right.
nice NIL package coming up. That's interesting. Can players walk away from that? Of course. But I'm going to tell you this. The Gophers barely 8 days ago, a week before Motzko's released, which was Wednesday, correct? The Gophers signed incoming this fall 26-27 season forward Christian Humphreys. He's in the OHL with Kitchener. This kid's got 84 points in 62 games. He's an offensive tactician. 27 goals, 57 assists. He grew up in the suburbs of Pittsburgh and is friends with LJ Mooney and is friends with Logan Cooley. This Christian Humphreys is coming in this year. I don't see LJ Mooney going anywhere. I
I
hope
don't
that
think
remains the case. That's a little tidbit for you.
I've heard through the grapevine that there was a potential if Motzko stayed, there might be some exits. I heard now
Like
that,
last year.
yep,
Yep.
and now that there's going to be a change, I think that most of the guys that are on the roster are going to stay put. Now, the guys that Bob recruited that are coming in, as for or the 18, 19-year-olds right now. I mean
Yep.
that could change, probably will change. It will
Sure.
change. It would
Sure.
change whether Bob stayed or whether he wasn't here, I think. I mean, that's just a revolving door. That's the way college hockey has become now.
Right.
So, but
And
yeah,
we'll
no,
talk about those kids.
I think a lot of Gopher hockey fans were happy to see the XL Energy ad with Mooney on there because I think he's going to stick around and we need him and he's a heck of a
Right.
player and Zemer too.
He's
And
fun to watch. I love
yeah,
that kid.
yeah. So, things change in college hockey, and if you're a Gopher hockey fan, things are changing right now. And like we said, we wish Bob the best. He gave us eight, I think it was 8 years he's been here. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So 8 good years got us to the national title game. And if that game ends up differently, he might be under a 4 or 5 year contract right now. But that's the way it is. It's a business, like we talked about. It's almost, elevated itself to kind of the pro level, or at least a minor league type of
Yeah. With
situation.
all its pros and cons, that's for sure. Do I have time for one more question for you, Brian?
You do.
Okay, help me out with this. We got the D1 men's college hockey. We got these big conference playoff games this weekend. St. Thomas Mankato's tonight, 7:07 p.m. No TV that I can find anywhere. Tomorrow, we've got Duluth heading back out to Denver. Now, there's a game.
Hmm.
Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, and I see no TV. What are we doing, NCAA? Let's, what's going on here? This should be, I know south of the Mason-Dixon line, not broadcast. I get it. But upper Midwest and the Northeast, let's access these games. How do we find them? What's going on? Big Ten Network, okay, not the right conference. Fine. But
Yeah,
Ohio State, Michigan is tonight. You know what time the puck drop is? 11 p.m.
what?
I'm not even kidding. Look that up.
Well, it used to be every Friday, Saturday. You knew the game was on.
Go to your
Back in the old
room.
WCHA days, I think
Go to
that's,
your room.
yeah. I think
No
now
dessert.
you probably got to stream through the conference streaming app, you know,
Oh, God
get those things,
almighty.
which is kind of a nightmare. But
One more ID and password and another 10, $15 out the door. Come on.
yeah. And if you talk to, I think God, which coach just did an interview and said they need to figure out the TV thing. They got to
Oh my
sign
God.
a TV deal where people can watch college hockey.
Right.
It's a great product, but nobody can watch it, you know.
Right.
And we talked about Minneapolis and going downtown to Minneapolis to go catch a game at Mariucci. You're talking probably a couple $100 by the time you get there and leave. And I don't know if you know if your car is going to be there when you go back out in the parking lot.
And it's such a joyful experience with the slick infrastructure around the U of M too. It's just such a treat. I love it.
Yeah, I miss the old Mariucci. The new Mariucci is great, a great venue. But when you grow up
Mooch.
with the old mooch. But
Right.
all
Right.
right, anything else, Tom?
I think that's it for now. We'll do departures and returners and the incoming kids for the fall. We'll do that after the coach is named and get everything fresh and we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, that wraps up another Let's Play Hockey podcast. Thank you to Tom Holler, contributor to the Red Line Report and an LPH columnist. Check out his articles on www.letsplayhockey.com. And we will see you next time.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Yes.